justice to the deserving and divide human beings based on superficial labeling and profound misunderstanding and lack of genuine knowledge. Judge not, lest ye be judged, is something we should all take to heart. Truth, as we know, will always be a stumbling block to many. May God enlighten those in darkness and keep his faithful in the light. And may God bless each and every one of you.
Father Stephen Ritter is the author of That Your Joy May Be Full, Learning from the Authentic Orthodox Theology of the Spirit, and is pastor of St. James Orthodox Mission in Buford, Georgia.
The ancient faith for the modern world. This is Ancient Faith Radio.
Welcome to Live with the Louhs with your hosts, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, where we will connect our Orthodox faith to day-to-day living and relationships to our family, our work, and our view of ourselves. Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, and Dr. Roxanne is a licensed clinical psychologist who uses her extensive training in private practice. Questions are welcome by calling 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-2346. Here now is Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Live with the Louhs. My name is Father Nicholas Lowe, and I'm joined by my lovely wife and co-host, Dr. Roxanne Lowe, who's a clinical psychologist right here in Jacksonville. And Live with the Louhs is a ministry of our parish, St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church right here in Jacksonville, Florida. And we're so honored that you're joining us on this Tuesday, November 2nd. You know, Live with the Louhs is a show that we hope will marry both faith and psychology to kind of give you some practical principles to live by. We call it practical Christianity, just some ways that you can, some steps that you can take to apply in your walk of faith to help you grow into the person that God wants all of us to be. And our show airs every single Tuesday right here on Ancient Faith at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You know, before we get into tonight's topic, we do invite you to join us on our social media platforms. If you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or even on YouTube, you can find us simply by going to The Louhs. If you simply put Louhs, The Louhs, you'll be able to join us on our social media platform. And every single day, we send out a daily inspirational message that you'll find right on those platforms. We also, if you don't have those particular platforms, we encourage you to go to our website. In fact, you can go right now during our show at thelouhs.com. That's Louhs.com. Click on that subscribe button. It's in the far right corner of our website. And all you have to do is simply put in your email address. And every single morning, you're going to receive a Louhs Daily Inspirational message that we hope you can apply in your everyday life. We also want to encourage you that if you haven't heard already, we came out just about, a couple months ago, Roxanne, with our Audible version of our book, Renewing You, a Priest, a Psychologist, and a Plan. We're so excited to announce to all of you that we're actually in the second printing of that book through Ancient Faith, who's our publisher. But we actually also have now the Audible version, and it's actually recorded in our own voices. We wanted you to hear from the two of us, Roxanne and I together. You can hear our vulnerabilities, our passion by what we're talking about. So if you haven't received the Audible version, as the holidays are approaching, we do encourage you to do so. All of the proceeds of this book go to outreach ministries, both in our community and outside of our church. So we encourage you to do that. You can find our book right here at store.ancientfaith.com. At store.ancientfaith.com. We're also on Amazon as well. In the Audible version, you can find also on Amazon.com as well as Audible.com. And hopefully that this book can be just a resource also for you and your family during these days to help you grow in your walk of faith. And finally, as many of you may already know, if you're friends of us on our social media platforms, in February of next year, February 18th through the 20th, Ancient Faith has asked us to lead a Renewing Your Marriage retreat. And we're encouraging all of you to make plans to be there. It's going to be held at the Antiochian Village, which is located in Ligonier, Pennsylvania. Again, those dates are February 18th through the 20th. The title of that retreat is called Making Over Your Marriage. You can find out more about our retreat by going to store.ancientfaith.com/events. That's store.ancientfaith.com/events. And tonight we encourage you, as we do every single show, is to join the conversation. We truly believe that growth happens in a conversation. And so we encourage you to call us tonight at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And if you're watching or tuned into on Facebook right now, or on Ancient Faith's Facebook page, we're actually broadcasting our show live on Facebook, on both Ancient Faith as well as the Louhs Facebook page. So definitely, if you're there, definitely share your comments in the comment lines. So tonight we're talking about a topic that I think so many of us have thought about. Maybe we're trying to figure out how to be that way, but it's a topic that I think that sometimes we simply struggle with, and that is being a Christian leader. You know, one of the hallmarks of being a Christian is our ability to lead. And throughout the Bible, Christ is never quiet about his desire for us to lead. He tells us in the Gospel of Matthew, let your light shine. He tells us that this is a way to lead people, that they will see your good works and give your Father in heaven glory. The Bible also tells, we hear Christ tell his disciples, that they're going to know that you are my disciples by the way that you love. In other words, another way of leading people is by the way in which you love people. The Bible tells us that we are called to be the salts of the earth and the lights of the world. All of this language about leadership. And one of my favorite Bible verses is one that I would encourage all of you to write down. It comes from the book of Acts, chapter 20, verses 28. Listen to what it says. It says, so keep watch over yourselves. Watch yourselves and over all of the flock which the Holy Spirit has placed in your care. I love that. It's telling us that there is a sphere of influence, a circle of influence that's around you, that God is saying, hey, be careful, because you're leading them, whether you realize it or not. The verse continues, be shepherds of the church of God, which he made his own through the blood of his Son. You see, we're called to be a leader. The definition of the word leader is a person who leads or is guiding someone else. But are all leaders the same? What does being a leader truly look like? How do we take the gifts that God has given us and lead his people? Well, if you're wanting to take those gifts that God has given you and to develop them and to be a leader, then tonight's show is a show for you. We're speaking with a great friend of ours, the president and COO of Chick-Fil-A, Tim Tassopoulos. In fact, Tim actually endorsed our book, Renewing You, and is someone that we have called on just as an inspiration in our own lives. I think Roxanne and I feel like he's part of our little sphere of friends that inspires us and motivates us, and we're so honored that he's joining us tonight. In his career as the president and COO of Chick-Fil-A, truly embodies Christian leadership. Let me just tell you a little bit about him. You know, Tim began his career at Chick-fil-A more than 40 years ago as an hourly restaurant team member and was appointed as president and chief operating officer in 2016. He graduated in 1981 from Oglethorpe University in Atlanta, Georgia, and with a bachelor's degree in history and political science. And then he went further. He received a master's of an MBA from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. in 1983. But this is really what is amazing about him. He's passionate about our youth, about education, and about making a difference in this world. And he shows that in his own actions. He serves on several academic and youth developmental boards. He's the chairman of the Board of Trustees for the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta, and also serves on the Board of Trustees for the Tull Charitable Foundation, and is a former member of the Board of Advisors at Georgetown University, McDonald School of Business. He also serves as on the advisory board for the Boy Scouts and he's a proud member of Holy Transfiguration Greek Orthodox Church in Marietta, Georgia. And I could speak over and over about how amazing Tim is, but I know our time is limited, and I want to give him an opportunity to share with you the keys to being a Christian leader. So Tim Tassopoulos, as always, brother, welcome to our show.
Father, great to be with you. And Dr. Roxanne, great to be back tonight with you all.
So happy to have you with us, Tim.
So Tim, let me just begin by asking you, what is your definition of leadership?
So, Father, when you ask that question, I think about the definition that I use that's in contrast with what's often a common assumption about leadership. I think often we think of leadership as position, title, what's on my name tag, where do I stack up in the organization chart? And that could be power or privilege or popularity, but I don't think that's leadership. My definition of leadership is intentional influence. And those two words mean a lot. And first, when I start with influence, it's really about being others focused. And it's about influencing them, but it's influencing others in an intentional way, a purposeful way. It's from the Greek, telos. What is that purpose? And for me, leadership is about influencing purposefully towards a better outcome, a brighter future, a deeper character, and a more effective, whether it's family, business, or parish or community organization. So for me, it comes right down to intentional influence.
This really sounds so much less about the individual status or rank and much more about those around that person of rank.
It really is. And, when we think about Christian leadership, I think that's one of the things that sets Christian leadership apart from these common definitions is that focus on others versus my own status, my own popularity. So for me, that's part of the connection there.
So, let's talk a little bit about Christian leadership. So there's this sort of notion of serving, right? Where the leader serves the people rather than the people serving the leader. It sounds to me, I know we talked before about this and how much, especially in Chick-fil-A or really with this foundation that you put the employee first, almost before the organization, right? And I guess I'm so curious to know what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. How would Christian leadership be different, in the day-to-day than traditional leadership models?
So, Dr. Roxanne, it starts right where you were, which is about making sure to ask yourself the question, am I a serving leader or a self-serving leader? And of course, Christ told us he came to serve, not to be served. And that's the modeling for us. And so when you think about how that plays out on a daily basis, here's for me, some of the specifics of that. One is asking yourself the question, am I focused on achievement or contribution? Achievement is exactly what it sounds like. What's that goal, especially often compared to somebody else? What have I accomplished compared to someone else? Contribution is really about what are we giving? It's really that contrast on a day-to-day basis of achievement is how am I doing compared to somebody else, instead of contribution, which is more reflective of Christian leadership, is what am I doing with what I've been given? And really, am I making a difference in someone else's life? So for me, that starting point about am I focused on achievement or contribution? Second is that you really stop and think about not focused on the privileges of leadership, but the responsibilities of leadership. And to me, this one's really important because so often we find our motivation on a daily basis to be what's in it for me, how's this going to work out for me, versus the idea of what am I responsible for, and what are the responsibilities of leadership. And then the third that I would add is, again, common assumption is that leadership is about controlling, when in fact, Christian leadership is about stewarding. When you steward, you stop and you think, whether it's a challenge or an opportunity, those are both gifts, and they're gifts provided to me that God's calling me to be a good steward of. And so I want to deal with that challenge. I don't want to avoid it because that challenge is going to get worse. And then what's the opportunity for impact or
Mm-hmm.
influence? I need to lean into that opportunity. And, when you think about a stewardship mindset, of course, Father, it comes from Matthew, 25:14-30 in the parable of the talents. But stewardship is just a reminder God owns it all,
Mm-hmm.
our challenges and our opportunities, and we need to steward those for His glory, not
Mm-hmm.
for anything that's going to come to us as credit. So those are some things on a daily basis that I try to think about and encourage our people to think about. And then it translates, Dr. Roxanne, into the service, into the hospitality, because, one thing that we've learned, cared for people, care for others. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that premise.
Right. And, as we look out in this world, that message of just service, of servant leadership, as we oftentimes refer to it as, when we look out the world, it seems so antithetical to what we're being taught. I mean, even within almost every facet of society, it is all about the title. It's all about how much work we have to do. We almost like kind of wear these labels, whether they're name tags or titles that we have, or just the thoughts of just how busy we are as some sort of, almost like an acknowledgement of just how special we are, or how and I think, I mean, just as in your responsibilities, with so many employees, what are some ways that I guess that Chick-fil-A kind of reminds, its employees, its team, about the importance of what what leadership looks like, and that servant leadership that we were talking about earlier?
So, two things that I would point to, Father. First, at least as it relates to Chick-fil-A, the fact that Chick-fil-A restaurants are all closed on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and that commitment to a day to rest, a day to spend time with family and friends, and a day to worship if someone chooses to do so, it communicates there's something more important than a dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more important is wholeness, wellness. It's
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity for us to stop and to really make sure, and then that we do take that Sabbath. What
Mm-hmm.
is really important is that actually that day is
Mm-hmm.
a day of Sabbath versus just I'll go to church in the morning and then I'll work the rest of the day. That's not
Mm-hmm.
really what it's about for us. So for us, that's important. And then the second thing is our leadership model at Chick-fil-A. We actually have a servant leadership model that we teach to
Mm-hmm.
our staff. Our owner operators learn it. And it's one where it is about serving others versus being self-serving. And so that's where when you have a 16 or 17-year-old team member and you ask them, when a customer says thank you and that team member is asked to say my pleasure, the reason that we're comfortable doing that is
Mm-hmm.
because it's an environment that says there's something more important than the dollar. It's about how we treat each other and our wellness, and that we really are. We're not perfect, but we're trying to really model and multiply the idea of servant leadership. So that's part of the ethos that we try to develop in the business.
And it seems like you are just transforming the restaurant business, because, again, as we've been mentioning, it just seems so antithetical to what we've always thought that what a leader looks like. It's all about position and power and authority. And in Scripture, we're seeing that Christ turned that all upside down. He tells them that He comes as a servant. We say even in our divine liturgy that He came not as the master but as a servant, and taking on the form of a man because He couldn't stand to see the human race being tormented by the devil anymore. That's what we say during a baptism that the priest says over the child. And I think it's just so beautiful that to see a major corporation, practicing some of those biblical principles. So you're listening to Live with the Louhs right here on Ancient Faith Radio. If you'd like to speak with Tim Tassopoulos, President and COO of Chick-fil-A, we encourage you to call us right now. We believe, as we mentioned at the very top of the show, that growth happens in a conversation. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on what are the keys to Christian leadership. You can call us at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And we're also put some comments in. We're also broadcasting live on our Facebook page, on the Louhs Facebook page, as well as Ancient Faith's Facebook page. So you can definitely go there and share a comment. I just got a text message just a few moments ago from someone that has a friend, has a daughter whose friend works for Chick-fil-A, and just commented on how much they love working for Chick-fil-A and how much they value
great.
their employees. I thought it was just kind of great to hear. Tim, when we talk about leadership, all of us have had people who have inspired and motivated us. Who have been the role models of leadership that have really shaped your leadership and in your life?
So personally, of course, I think about my parents who really role modeled a lifelong commitment to Orthodox Christian faith, to the church.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the owner operator I worked for when I was 17 years old, who was only 21 years old, actually, who owned his own Chick-fil-A restaurant. I mean, the power of encouragement. And then, of course, I think about Maria, my wife, who really is a model of authenticity and care. So that's kind of on the personal side. On the leadership side, there's two people that I'll highlight, Father. The first is Truett Cathy, who's the founder and was the, of course, chairman and CEO of Chick-fil-A, now passed away. One of the things about Truett, and I had the honor of working closely with him for 40 years, was that Truett was the same person in every setting. His personal consistency. He treated people with kindness, one-on-one in his office, in a small group setting, in front of 10,000 people, in difficult situations. I saw that consistency. He was the same person in public and in private. And then the other, speaking of private, was he's known as a philanthropist, but Truett was incredibly generous in a private way. And many students where he paid for their college tuition. He handled families' medical bills, all privately. Nobody knew about these things. And he wasn't one to put his name on buildings and that sort of thing. He focused on education because he thought that was, as he said, a seed planted that would bear fruit in the future that he may not see. So a role model for me about trying to be the same person at home, at church, at work, in the community, and trying to be generous. And then the other role model, Dr. Roxanne and Father, you may know this person. It's John Wooden, former basketball coach at UCLA, now deceased.
Yes.
But Coach Wooden was a hero for me growing up in the 60s and 70s. He led UCLA to all those national championships. But I was very blessed to spend a number of times with Coach Wooden, different conferences and interviews. And he modeled two things that I think are so important. One was he said, your character is who you really are. Your reputation is what others think about you. You can't control what others think about you. You can only control your character, which I thought that was so important. And then the second thing is Coach Wooden, with all of that success and all those championships, in fact, most people say the greatest sports coach of the 20th century, he never talked to his team about winning. He only talked to them about do your personal best. And so I've tried to think about that in terms of my challenge to myself, but also to all of us in our business is, are we playing to our personal best? Are we doing our personal best? And what's fascinating is that's Coach Wooden's philosophy, but Truett also used to ask us, why not your best? And so
isn't that amazing that
incredible?
Here's these, well, I was going to say, look at these two men that, obviously in two different areas, two different fields, yet utilized and understood the concept of just leadership and Christian leadership and leading people, and just recognizing just their power and their influence, and never letting that get to who they were as they became more. They won more and more championships, as they gained more and more financial wealth. They never forgot where they came from, and more importantly, they utilized that as a means of continuously inspiring people to be humble, and to be grateful, and more importantly, to lead people. And it's like this legacy that continues on far after they've gone on. That where you still hear their words, it still speak to us even in our days, right now.
I mean, I think that this is just so interesting that this model is capable of thriving in our society today, because often in leadership and in sports and in sports leadership, there's a level of demanding respect without necessarily giving that respect, and that there's more of a distance and a disbelief in the importance of the personal relationship with who you're leading.
Very true.
There's this kind of like distant arrogance you perceive from a leader, and intimidation that you can't draw near. And it really sounds like, Chick-fil-A sort of going in the opposite direction of that in a very profound and successful way. And so just want to piggyback on that with a question we just received. The question says, what is the biggest barrier that you, Tim, face in establishing a servant leadership culture at Chick-fil-A? What do you run into here?
Yeah, so two things. One is to assume that each of us, starting with me, we don't actually have the ego problem, when in fact we do. And so that acknowledgement that we're actually challenged by that self-serving view of leadership versus a serving view each and every day. So an example of that today, I was meeting with one of our corporate staff members who we'd asked to take a new assignment. We mishandled how we communicated it. And this particular staff member was excited about the assignment, but very disappointed about how it got communicated. And I had a meeting with a staff member and I said, we messed up and I am sorry. And again, that's the kind of culture that Truett would want, for us to acknowledge our mistakes. And it was just important to be able to say that. So really to make sure that you don't assume, I'm over that challenge of really making it about me. And even, Father, you give a lot of sermons. One of the things I tell myself before I'm communicating to our operators or staff is a little bit of a self-check of, okay, as I stand up here, do I really want them to say, boy, that's a great talk, Tim, you just gave, versus, boy, this really served me. This really helped me. And so that's really every day, and talking openly about the challenge of that. And then the second thing I would say, and Dr. Roxanne, I know you think about this a lot, but it's the challenge of busyness. It's the pace that we live in each and every day. So often that pace just really puts us on emotional edge. It keeps us from really serving others, and we focus more on ourselves. So I talk frequently at Chick-fil-A about Proverbs 4:23 that says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. And so
I love that Bible verse.
It's just a reminder that, okay, just step back. And that self-care is so important, because if you don't have some degree of self-care, then you really aren't going to be able to care for others. And as I mentioned earlier, care for people. So that busyness can be a real challenge to servant leadership. And then that, especially the ego trick of, I don't have this problem of being self-serving is the second one.
So how do your leaders put aside the ego, right? I mean, listen, Chick-fil-A is probably one of the best run restaurants I've ever been to. It's consistently that way. And I think this would be the question. I mean, where is it the faith that comes in, that the humility, the seeking of humility, or the eagerness to serve? What helps with ego? Because I think this is a temptation for everyone at the top of any organization. Anything that they do is a temptation.
Yes. And again, we don't get it right, and we make a lot of mistakes. But I think a couple of things that help. One is our selection process is extremely rigorous. And so there's each year about 100,000 people that get interested in being a Chick-fil-A owner operator, and we select about 100. So it's highly selective. And really what we're looking for is not starting with that person's track record in terms of all their accomplishments, even though that's a little bit of an indicator. We actually start with character first. And we talk about 3 C's for selection: character, chemistry, and competence. And so when you start with character, you really hope you're going to hedge your bet that you're going to pick people that care about others and want to do the right thing and want to serve. So that's just key, as selection is important. And then the second thing is we're so blessed to be part of a privately owned business. And Truett, Kathy is the founder, and then the Kathy family. They care about the business, and they care about operating the business based on their strong faith. And so that ethos is just part of, I think, the culture of who gets attracted to Chick-fil-A, but then also what we're trying to put in place every day as we serve, hopefully, hot chicken sandwiches and cold lemonade with some fresh waffle fries. So that's the intent.
I
You just
love
made
it.
me hungry.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Good.
You are listening to Live with the Louhs right here on Ancient Faith Radio. We're so excited that you're joining us. We have an amazing guest in Tim Tassopoulos, the president and COO of Chick-fil-A. And we're talking about the keys to Christian leadership. And we invite you to join the conversation by calling us at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question, as we already have a host of email questions coming in. You can email us a question also at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. We actually have several calls that are coming in, so let's get to the first one. Welcome, caller, to Live with the Louhs. Hello, John.
Yes.
Hey, welcome to Live with the Louhs.
Hello. I just wanted to ask a question. So how do you deal with staff that isn't in the Christian realm or believers, or how do you work with them?
So thanks, John. Actually, you don't have to be a Christian, obviously, to work at Chick-fil-A. We don't discriminate in any way based on religion of any or race or anything like that. And so we're an equal opportunity employer. But one of the things that's evident about Chick-fil-A is because it's privately owned, because there's just a strong culture, generally we attract people that care about service and hospitality and care about being part of the community. And so it's a little bit of an attraction of people that have those kind of values, but clearly we're an equal opportunity employer, both at our corporate office and then our owner operators pursue equal opportunity as well in the restaurants.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because, I run my own business and, we have a lot of Christian values that we instill in everybody in the restaurant. But at the end of the day, if they are not followers, if you will, how do you deal with that in growing your business? Because you've done an amazing job. So I'm just curious about that.
Right. Well, one of the things, again, it comes back to for us is, for instance, that practice of being closed on Sunday. It just communicates something different about the restaurant. And so even though clearly Sunday's chosen and was by Truett Cathy originally way back in 1946, because, he wanted to honor the Lord, it also communicates to those that aren't of the Christian faith that, okay, here's a business that puts something else first. People care, not just, okay, let's just get more dollars in the cash register.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, John, so much for calling us in. We love you, and thanks so much for joining us on the show. We actually have another caller who's also named John. So, John, welcome to Live with the Louhs.
Good evening, Father, Presbytero, and Tim.
How are you? Welcome.
Hello, John.
Doing well. Tim, first, before my question, I wanted to thank you because I hadn't had the opportunity to. I got a chance to attend your second Sunday session back in April at Holy Transfiguration at your invitation.
Oh, great.
And what an incredible program and ministry that is for young people. And it was such a blessing to see so many people, with everything going on and their fellowship, but also because we talk about, quantity a lot, but we love quantity. So it was such a wonderful thing to be a part of, and hopefully I can come back again. My question is, I know you've presented at different conferences before, Orthodox and non-Orthodox alike, and there's been a lot of conversation that I've been a part of recently about the need for leadership development in the church, and how that there are so many areas of opportunity within the Orthodox Church to have continuing education in the realm of leadership, both for clergy and laity, but specifically for laity, because we call upon so many people with different talents to offer them to the church, and yet sometimes they feel inadequate, or they feel like they need more help to be in a better position to lead. So I was wondering what your take is on what we as a church either are doing or what we can do to support and promote and create opportunities for leadership development, not only for clergy, but for laity as well.
Mm-hmm.
Great question, John, and great to connect. I loved when you came to see us. So, and you're welcome back anytime. So great question. Two thoughts. One is there is an individual commitment that we need to make as Orthodox Christians if we really want to grow as leaders, and it's to really be a student of leadership. And of course, first and foremost, that starts with Scripture and really prayer, asking God to give you wisdom, guidance, and direction. But that being a student of leadership really continues with your own journey of what I would encourage listening to leadership podcasts. I'm a huge fan of Deacon Michael Hyatt. And of course, Ancient Faith has a great program, Deacon Michael Hyatt and Ann Bezarides have on the Orthodox Leader. And so I think some of it is just that individual commitment to study, to seek out mentors that really experienced leaders that can help you grow and develop as leaders. So that's first and foremost. And then the second is I do think there is programmatic development. And whether it's Orthodox Leadership Institute conferences, whether it's retreats like what Father Nick, you and Dr. Roxanne are going to hold. I know it's about marriage, but I know there's a lot of other retreats that can be helpful. We've got a lot of young adult conferences. And so that development, even if it's not positioned as a leadership conference, that development is so important. And we've got to continue, I believe, to invest in those kind of programs. Lastly, the last thing I'll say is I do think parish level commitment to leadership development is vitally important. And that's something that I really try to spend time with parish leaders to try to encourage that. So those are some things that I would offer, John, I think are really important to us as Orthodox Christians.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sean, for calling, and we really appreciate that. And we encourage all of you that are tuning in to call in if you get some of that great wisdom that Tim is sharing with all of us. Again, that number is 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. Or email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. We have another caller that just called in, Tim, that I want to get in right before our break. Her name is Stephanie. So, Stephanie, welcome to Live with the Louhs.
Father Lowe, I'm the sister of Maria Mendeleris, and Chris Mendeleris is my brother-in-law. And Tim, I just want to tell you, you're a good friend of, like, a friend of mine, Helen Cosmos McEwen.
Absolutely, Stephanie. How are you?
We grew up together. We're like sisters. We talk several times a week.
Love it.
I'm doing great. And I think you know my first cousin, Jimmy Dykus.
Very well. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to call and say hello, and I thought this call tonight was amazing, and bless you, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie, so much for calling in. We appreciate that. And again, we're going to take a quick break. But on the other side of this break, we want to really kind of delve into this, as we've been talking about earlier. One thing that Roxanne and I pride ourselves on and try to share with you all as listeners is practical Christianity. And so we're going to give you some really practical steps that you can apply in being the leader that Christ wants all of us to be. So stay right with us right here on Live with the Louhs on Ancient Faith Radio.
Live with the Louhs with Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne will be back in a moment. Give them a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. They would love to hear from you.
Are you struggling in your walk with Christ? Do you want to rediscover your reason for living, the person you were created to be? Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan gives you the keys to unlock areas of your life that hold you back from fully experiencing the renewal and transformation God has in mind for you. Co-authored by a priest and a psychologist, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, Renewing You combines principles of spiritual growth with psychological tools to help you become your best self, fully connected with God's purpose for you. To purchase this book, please go to store.ancientfaith.com. That's store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Live with the Louhs and Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne. Do you have a question for the Louhs? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here once again is Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, welcome back to Live with the Louhs. We're so grateful that you're joining us tonight on this Tuesday, November 2nd. We have been speaking with Tim Tassopoulos, the president and COO of Chick-Fil-A, on the keys to Christian leadership. Before we continue our conversation, we just do want to encourage you all, if you haven't or are not receiving our daily inspirational messages, please go to our website at thelouhs.com. That's LOUHS.com. Click on the subscribe button, put your email address in, and every day you'll just receive a daily word of encouragement. If you love this show, I can promise you that I hope that you will also enjoy our daily inspirational messages. Tim, when you were sharing earlier about just how important it is that we're constantly learning and growing, and that things, whether it be through podcasts or whether it be through reading of the scripture, I couldn't agree with you more, because I think even as a role as the priest, people oftentimes, think that as a priest, once you stand before the altar, that in some ways that you already know everything. And I think sometimes we as priests sometimes kind of give that illusion, if you will, that we have everything answered. But what I have found in my own ministry is that I'm in a constant state of learning. And one of the things that we feel, and I love what you were saying earlier, when you said before you give a message or delivering a message, that you always, remember that, that what is really the purpose behind what I'm saying? Is this for me or for them? And one of the things I've been doing, for years and years, I've shared this with my community, with my church family, is that, right before I go and give my sermon, oftentimes people will see me kind of just pause for a few moments. And my prayer is the same. I always say, Lord, let these words that come out of my mouth not be my words, but let them be your words that can inspire and motivate your people. And it's just something that I've just kind of felt like, just to kind of keep my mind, because it's so tempting to say, well, wait, was it a great sermon? Did I do all this? Did I hit all those points and make it more about me than it is about Christ? And so I love what you were sharing earlier. I think it's so important. And I think for our listeners to recognize that even though that you may have titles as president or and COO or of priest or of doctor, like Roxanne, we are, I think one of the hallmarks of being a leader is remember that you're in a constant state of learning. Like you're not there. It's recognizing that you still have to grow and to learn. And I think that's one of the things that inspires people, is that, hey, they're not there yet, and so I'm not there yet. And so it makes also a relationship that is much more realistic and more just something that I think that is so much more valued, especially when people are looking at us as Christian leaders. But I really want to kind of get a little bit more practical with you, and to ask you, you're obviously a man of faith and someone that I think tries your best. We're all fallen, but you try your best to walk the talk. What are some daily or weekly practices that we can share with our listeners tonight that you put into place to help them grow as a Christian leader?
So one of the things that I have been committed to for a long time, years and years and years, is daily early morning prayer, scripture reading, and reflection. And I do it every day of the week and have done it for years. And you may remember I've talked about this with you before, Father and Dr. Roxanne, but it's reading Proverbs daily. Each chapter there's 31 chapters of Proverbs. So today was the second chapter. And it's the ultimate wisdom book for us to study, to learn to be a leader. So that's a practice that is very, very important to me. Daily gospel, daily epistle, and then daily prayer sequence. The second thing I was going to say, and I'll offer just a handful of tips if that's okay, Father, but the second one is remember that you've got to start as a follower before you learn to be a leader. And it's important to learn good fellowship. And what that means is to remember we can learn from others. I want to be a good teammate, a good team member. And so asking yourself that question daily and weekly, all right, what team do I need to serve this week versus just, okay, how do I want to lead this week? Another tip is, and Dr. Roxanne, you may respond to this one maybe, but is to think about your thinking. And
Yeah, sure.
it is so important to not fall in the trap of, well, of course this is the way it is. And it's like, wait, step back and like, okay, how am I approaching this? Do I have a
Right.
bias? And so I try to remind myself each week going into the week to think about my thinking. What are the what I call mental models that I have that may just not be accurate? And what are my biases? What are my blind spots? So that's a key practice. Another key practice is express gratitude daily. And I say thank you a lot. And I try to, every text message, every email message, every interaction, at the end of that, genuinely express appreciation, that I'm grateful for you. Not just, hey, I appreciate the task, but I'm grateful for you. And again, I learned it from my operator, Gary Geddes, who I mentioned earlier, Father. When I worked for Gary as a 17-year-old, the very first day I finished my shift, Gary looked at me and he said, thank you for today. And he did it the second day and the third day. And then he did it not just for me, but all my fellow teammates. And I realized Gary had made a commitment to express gratitude daily. And I've just tried to learn from that. So that's another practice or a tip. And then the last two, one is regularly, when you need to, just say you're sorry or I apologize. I did it, as I mentioned earlier, I did it today with a staff member. And this is a 20-year veteran of Chick-fil-A. And we, again, messed up that communication, but I just needed to apologize. I said, I am sorry. And then the last one is, and I think this one relates back to growth, is learn to lead without authority. And what that means is when you go volunteer, you're not getting paid for something, and you volunteer and you don't have a leadership position. And what you learn to do is you learn to influence, you learn to serve, you learn to help build a team spirit without authority. Well, what you'll do is you'll lead out of character and you'll lead out of care for others.
I love that.
And that is how you really want to lead when you have authority, is you want to lead as if you don't have that authority, because that's really how you build engagement with others. So for me, that's one reason I think volunteering in the community, in our parishes and outside our parishes, it's just so important, because we're serving others, but also we're growing when we do. So that's another practice, is learn to lead without authority.
I love that.
What wonderful tips. And for all of you listeners, if you don't have a pen and paper out, I would go back through this podcast and take some notes as we're listening to you. And so I guess, one of the questions I have, when thinking about what is the why for the what, when you think about saying I'm sorry, what is that coming from your faith, Tim, or does that come from the foundation of servant leadership? I mean, all of these things, expressing gratitude. I mean, so much of, we can learn from others. That's seeing value in someone else. I mean, a lot of those are tenets of our faith. So that's sort of a question I have. What motivates each of these tips within you as a leader? Is it the faith, or is it the model?
Yeah. So such a good question, Dr. Roxanne. The reality is, for me, you can't separate the two. For me, servant leadership is the expression of my faith in Christ. And so when I think about, like, I have a written life plan and I have a written life purpose and a life passion. And that life purpose for me is to multiply God's gifts in my life and in the lives of others. And so I feel like he's called me to be a good steward of the gifts he's given me. And the way to do that is to help multiply those gifts in others. And then my passion, maybe not a surprise, is to develop future leaders in my family, business, and community. And so I want to help, Marina, I want to help Luke and Nicholas grow. And then we want to, where we can, serve the community, and then where I can, help the business. And for me, helping the most is to actually develop future leaders. And that's going to be a service to future generations, again, that I may not even see. So So for me, I can't separate
You can't
servant
separate
leadership
them.
and faith for me.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, so when we're thinking about the effectiveness of servant leadership, are you seeing in Chick-fil-A the example of getting others to do their best and respond with tenets of their faith, even if they're not faithful people per se? Maybe they didn't come in as a Christian, but yet due to your, I'm sorry, your gratitude, your serving, you're willing to learn from them and assigning value to them. Are you seeing the fruit of that in others in terms of how that translates in leadership to sort of creating more leadership?
Yeah, absolutely, without question. And so, again, that culture, that ethos, it's pretty pervasive. And so I think it just it encourages people, whether they come from that particular faith perspective or not. I would also say to don't think this is obviously not just a Chick-fil-A principle, but when you look at people like we're talking about Coach Wooden, incredibly successful coach, but very strong in his faith. Tony Dungy, former football coach, now announcer, but very, very well respected, very strong in his faith, and a very effective leader. And so I think this is one of those reminders that, this idea that you just can't be effective in the marketplace or in athletics or in education. You just can't do it and, be faith-based. I just don't believe it because I've seen too many examples of people that, again, none that are perfect, but people that are committed to their faith that really can live out those principles and do it effectively in multiple environments.
What a great thing for leaders, people in position of leadership to hear, because I think a lot of what leads us to not do that, for leaders or coaches, people at the top is fear. Right? I don't know that it's because, people intentionally, don't want to serve, but there's this sort of fear of,
the responsibility. Can I take care?
Right.
Can I actually do this?
Is it going to work?
Right.
Am I going to really encourage these principles? And I want the organization to survive. I want it to thrive. So there's this incredible focus on success because of the fear of what if it doesn't.
This is actually an email question that came in, Roxanne, just now. It said that, the question to you, Tim, is how do you know that you and those that are on your team are truly doing their best? I work at a public school district and I've resisted moving into an administrative position. I tell myself that I can make a bigger difference for teachers and students in my role of professional development. I've also seen so many in administration that seem to be so focused on their position of power and worry that if in that role, I too might let my ego and pride get the best of me. And so she's basically, how do you know that it's time to move into a new position of leadership in your organization? What a
great question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, what would you do to encourage people who may be afraid of just being in that role of a leader?
Yeah. So do we know the name of the person who sent that question in? Because I'd love to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. If,
okay,
I don't want to take a chance. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So one of the things I like about the person who sent that in and how they wrote that is they sound like the reluctant leader. And I think the reluctant leader is sometimes the very best leadership candidate. It's the person who says, I'm not sure. I don't know it all. I'm going to depend on others and I'm going to depend on God's grace to do this. Well, that's exactly the perspective we need to have as a leader that feels called, but still not worthy. And Father, you're much more of a biblical expert than me, but I think the pattern throughout Scripture is leaders that were called that said, Lord, I'm not worthy. I don't have what it takes, from Moses all the way through. And so for me, the person that asked that question, because they asked it the way they did, to me, they sound like a prime candidate to really respond to that calling. And so here's the other thing that I would say for somebody that wants to say, how do I, create that confidence? That's when finding a mentor is so important, is to go to someone, perhaps in that school or perhaps in that district that you respect, that you say, you know what, they didn't sacrifice their family and they didn't sacrifice their principles and their character to actually make a difference in the education community. What can I learn from them? And it just, to me, gives you not only handles or practices to hold on to, it also gives you a little bit of an inspiration because, that's an example. And it gives me some energy that I think I can pursue that as well. So
I love that.
To me, I
That's
love
great.
that reluctant leader, and I love the idea of having mentors to start.
I think it's so important. We've got a call that's in. We've only got a few minutes left of our show, but we have a caller. Donna, welcome to Live with the Louhs.
Hi, Father Nick and Roxanne and Tim. It's Donna Trachis from.
Hey,
Donna.
Hi.
How are y'all doing?
We're doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Doing really
Awesome.
well. Pete doesn't even know I'm calling. This is very impromptu. But I was listening
tell
in.
Pete, hey.
Yes.
And thank you. I will. I was listening in, and it was just meant to be, because I'm actually going through something similar at my public school here,
Mm-hmm.
and was just curious, Tim, what your thoughts on standing up for Christian values in a public school where there is a separation of church and state, but very briefly, our prayer at the poll, the flagpole, once a month, is being questioned by a group that is against it. And the people that are in charge of this prayer at the poll are actually, responding back. They're not sitting back and just not doing it, which is great. But how do you lead in a teacher position where there is that fine line?
Yeah. So I have a couple of thoughts there. And obviously, Donna, I may not know all the exact specifics of the situation, but here's the thing for me is
the specific is just attending prayer at the poll. That's
right.
it.
Okay.
Not
so if
talking about it in class, not teaching it, just attending.
Right. So here's the thing for me. If the person who might be defending the prayer at the poll, advocating for it, if you do it in a way where you lose your Christian witness, to me, like, what's the point? In other words, if like we get ugly about it or antagonistic, it's like, okay, so what are we doing here? And so for me, just a grace-based approach. And I like the idea of it's not talking about it, but just doing it, and where we gather and we pray. We don't make a big deal out of it. Don't try to bring a bunch of attention. At the end of the day, if the district says, you just can't do that on the grounds of the campus, to me, it's like, okay, let's go 20 feet away outside the fence, and we're going to gather for prayer. And it's like, again, where sometimes you just have to follow that authority, yet at the same time, you don't give up your witness. So anyway, that's my thought.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
I love
Tim.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. Give my love to the family, please.
I will. You do the same.
Thank you.
Bye, Donna.
Bye.
We only have about 2 minutes left, Tim, and I just wanted to get your thoughts. I know Roxanne had this question she wanted to ask you, so I'm going to leave it up to her.
I have so many more questions I want to ask you. I can't believe it's only 5 minutes left. As a leader, though, what is the most important thing that you can do for your team, your business, or your ministry? What's your bit of advice, for leaders?
Yeah. Two pieces. Number one, ensure that there's a common goal, a common purpose, a common vision. Again, we go back to the word telos. If there's not something bigger than ourselves, then we'll fall into the self-serving trap. And so whatever that goal is, we're going to make a difference in our parish, fighting homelessness in our community. That's bigger than ourselves. A team that says we're going to just make customers feel like that coming to our business just makes their day, bigger than ourselves. And so you got to start with that common goal, that common vision. There's nothing like it. And then second, again, if it's contribution oriented, even more important than achievement oriented. In other words, we win the trophy, achievement. We make a difference, contribution. So what's that common goal makes it bigger than ourselves? Second is, as the senior leader, your number one responsibility is to develop future leaders. And it comes straight from 2 Timothy 2:2, where Paul tells Timothy, listen to me and share what I've learned to others, who will in turn learn others. It's kind of that 4D principle from Paul to Timothy to the next leaders, who will in turn teach the next leaders. And so being committed to leadership development, and the most important part of that is you give people real responsibility. As the senior leader, that's the most important thing you can do, is to give people real responsibility. So start with shared vision, common goal, purpose greater than ourselves, and then make sure commit development.
I love that. I love it. Any final bits of just advice for our listeners in the last 60 seconds of the show?
Yeah, the last thing I would say, Father, in terms of the essence of Christian leadership is confident humility. Really, really try to develop confident humility, confidence to do what's right, do what's best, be not afraid. But that confidence is oriented towards, again, the purpose, the team, not yourself. The humility, though, it's that I don't know it all, because if I'm not humble, I can't learn. And so that combination, that uncanny combination of confident humility, that's the kind of leader that I think Christ is calling us to be.
Amen. What a great way to end.
Wisdom.
Tim, we just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. You always inspire all of us. I'm sure everyone that comes into contact is inspired by you and continue the great work that you're doing. We also want to thank Matushka Trudy, who's the producer of tonight's show right here on Ancient Faith. If you've enjoyed the show, tell your friends and join us next Tuesday for another exciting show of Live with the Louhs. Next Tuesday, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Rhonda Anderson, who's a licensed clinical psychologist, on the impact that technology is having on our health and our wellness. So you don't want to miss that show next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Ancient Faith. So for Dr. Roxanne Lowe and myself, we thank you again for joining us tonight. God bless you all and stay strong in your walk of faith.
Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne are the authors of the book Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan, which can be purchased at store.ancientfaith.com. Their daily inspirational messages can be found